All right, we're going to get started. I'm a recovered alcoholic. My name's Tony. Welcome everybody to Thursday Night Big Book Study Workshop with the Program of Recovery. How we open this meeting, where we're at in the process, is we open with, we'll do it with the serenity prayer. What do we need for a good meeting? God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. I always like that sound of a pop can opening up. We have worksheets and big books for those that want to follow along. If you don't have a big book, grab one. We got worksheets that you can kind of go through the process with. We're at an interesting point. We're just getting into the fifth step, right? And what we do is a little different than most groups. We stick with what the book says, not what we think it says. So that usually causes a lot of problems, right? Because a lot of people usually go with what they've been taught, and they never did much research in regards to what was happening in here. So what really helps if we could pay attention to what's happening here, because it's kind of hard to have a meeting happening while you're still chatting away, right? So if you kind of don't mind, we could facilitate this thing. So everybody want to open their book to into action, I guess, eh? Into action. So a lot of us, I don't know if anybody's ever relapsed here. Anybody ever prone to relapse here? You know, it's usually genius type minds, right? Because it's pretty hard, especially if you've been around a little while. We're almost impossible to talk to. You ever notice that? You know, usually we look for a sponsor and we want to tell them how we want to be sponsored, right? I always find that interesting, right? But I've never met anybody who's ever been through this process who's ever relapsed. Right? And it may sound kind of weird, but I've never met one person in the last 35 years who's ever went through this, right? Who's maintained it, who's ever relapsed. I've met a lot of people who haven't done this, who relapse continuously. Seems to be the common thread. Well, let's ask, how many people has relapsed as the result of going through this course of action and maintaining it? You don't know that you're lying, right? Right? Because if you were to maintain this course of action and got what was it, then it's
I see what you're saying. Sorry.
Yeah. So you want to take back your vote? So that's an important case, because a lot of times we think, oh, I did relapse, because I've never met anybody who's ever relapsed as the result of doing this and maintaining it. I've met a lot of people who stopped doing this, who thought they did it, and who are no longer here anymore, right? Anybody? Anybody? How many people thought they had this going on before and then celebrated with another 24-hour chip, right? And you talked about how great you were doing, and then, whatever happened to? Yeah, whatever happened to, right? So one of the things, a lot of us, when we go to meetings, like, we're under the impression that we're going to be here forever based on how we feel. Anybody? I think relapse is unthinkable. This is never happening again. And we get self-based recovery. And then as long as I rely on me and my thinking and what I'm doing, I should be all right. As long as I don't pick up, blah, blah, blah. Anybody ever hear that stuff? Well, it works perfect if you're not of this type. If you're not of this type, just not drinking, don't pick up no matter what. Meeting makers make it. Page 417, we'll get that out of the way, Ray. You know, page 417 all works great, self-analysis and all that other stuff, right? So when we kind of look at this thing, and we started realizing we're going to kind of back up just to kind of page, just to give everybody a break here, page 44. And they talked about, in the preceding chapters, you have learned something of alcoholism. We hope we've made clear the distinction between the alcoholic and non-alcoholic. Then they talk about, if you honestly want to, you find you cannot quit entirely, including weekend holidays and birthdays. Or when drinking, you have little control over the amount you take. You're probably alcoholic. If that be the case, you may be suffering from an illness which only a spiritual experience will conquer. Which only a spiritual experience will conquer. And so at this point in time, did they say, what do you think that means to you? Or what's your own conception of a spiritual experience? Or, right? They didn't ask you so far what you think. You ever notice that? Right at this stage of the game, they made a couple statements, right? In the preceding chapters, you've learned about this illness, right? They talked about the body and mind. And most people understand the physical part. Anybody understand when you have one, you want more? How many people want more? Right? How many people thought it was the pretzels? You know, something makes me thirsty. I don't know what it is, but I'm thinking about the next one before I'm finished the first one. Not everybody thinks like that. How many people find that surprising? How many people drank in the bar and thought everybody got loaded in the bar? Right? I thought that was the aim, right? And see how much you can get out by the end of the night, right? Like everybody clinked and clanked when they left, right? Start with pitchers, end up with bottles, right? Anyways, we'll leave that one alone. And how many people made a solemn oath never to do it again? Right? And how many people thought they had it going on and did it again? So it's kind of baffling, right? And then, so at this stage of the game, when we realize, oh my God, it's going to happen again, that's the step one promise, right? That's what I'm agreeing to. If I'm powerless over something, that means it's going to continue to happen. Who gave us that idea was the doctor, right? The Dr. Silkworth talked about his observations on people like us is they keep repeating, right, the desperate experimentation of the first drink, right? Drinks they see others taking with impunity, right? And they have no defense against it, roughly. That we found out it makes sense for us to have a drink when the day before we would say we'd never drink again. Anybody like that here? So anybody make promises to people? Anybody make promises to themselves? How many people swore off forever, never again, only to do it again, right? Anybody around you more surprised than you that you drank again? Oh, yeah. And then after a while, they just stop saying stuff. Anybody? They just look at you, right? Yeah, we know you're trying. We know you're going to quit. Not today, though. Waiter. Totally overreacting here. Here's your 3-month chip back. What did you go? Overreacted. I don't know why I went to treatment for the 3rd time. Overreacted. So there's an ongoing problem. So from the doctor's opinion, again, they reiterated here that we have to have the psychic change or spiritual experience, right? Then on the next page, they talked about lack of power as our dilemma, and we had to formulate a power with something greater than ourselves. Obviously, why? To create this change. What change? The change that they talked about in the spiritual appendix in the back of the book. That this mindset that needs to be recreated or reallocated or whatever, right? It needs to be shifted in a way that I could recover from the thing that's killing me. Right? And so which is interesting, once we recover from this thing, are we still suffering from it? No. When you recover from something, if you brought your car to a mechanic shop and it had a problem and you paid them $4,000 to fix it, and when you left they said, yeah, just, you'll have to live with it for the rest of your life. How'd you feel about that? Would you want your money back? Yeah, you'd go there with the idea that they could fix the problem that you were having before you went there, yes? So came to believe that power greater than could restore us to sanity. If you have sound mind, will you be doing the things that used to make sense for you to do? Right? So can you claim soundness of mind every time you relapsed? So if you had that part of your mind corrected, then would relapse be a concern? No, it wouldn't be a concern anymore because the problem's removed. So as long as that problem's persistent, we realize I can't see, feel, and touch it. It's lying dormant, and when it presents itself, I'm relapsing again. I'm loaded. Anybody have the thinking after they pick up, go, oh my God, I'm not supposed to be doing this? What are you doing? And your body says, we're having another one. That's what we're doing. Yee-hoo, right? Where's the rent money? No. Where's the support money? Where's the... Got to be clean underwear around here somewhere. Okay, so... Sorry, did I say that out loud? So anyways, we're brutal when we get in our thing. So... They're actually saying that once I experience this psychic change or spiritual experience, I no longer have the same problem as I was exhibiting in step 1. I still have the allergy, but I don't have the mental component part that makes me do an act against my own will, right? So I'm allergic to pistachios. When I got diagnosed with that based on a history of not knowing what was happening, but when I had a severe reaction and it got explained to me in emergency, guess how many times I've eaten it since then? 0. Now, if I would have ate them again and ended up back in emergency, you think they would have looked at me a little weird? Especially if it was the same nurse? And then if I went a little longer and I ended up back there again, and I said, but it was pistachio ice cream. You think they would look at me kind of weird? And then if I ended up there again, and I said, what are you doing back here again? And I thought, well, this didn't have the red dye on them. I thought it was the red dye causing. So who would I talk to, a dietitian or a psychiatrist? You're picking up what we're putting, right? So here they're saying, as long as this condition is present, I'm going to continue to have that experience of, I can't believe this happened again. But once this psychic change or spiritual experience happens, I no longer have to worry about that condition representing itself. Like, there's no concern whatsoever in my life for me eating pistachios again. Why? Because I have soundness of mind. It's not, and that's the very same thing that becomes present here when we go through this course of action, that component of the mind, they call it an alcoholic mind, right? And once that is removed, so once I have a psychic change or spiritual experience as the result of these steps, do I still have an alcoholic mind? No. That's why we go through the study. Because if I have an alcoholic mind still, what am I going to end up doing? I'm going to end up relapsing as long as that component's there. But if this component is moved, the problem's removed, it doesn't exist anymore for me, do I still have an alcoholic mind? No. So then what am I left with? I'm left with the human dilemma. I'm left with me. Right? Anybody, now your problem starts. Anybody ever start? How many people are really good at thinking here? How many people spend all day thinking, God, that was a great exercise. I can't wait to do that again. So we see the mind works against ourselves. We spend all day up there, right? And it's not a good exercise because usually when you're up there visiting in a neighborhood that you have no business being in, unsupervised and alone, right? Right? You're in a bad neighborhood, walking around with 20 sticking out of your pocket. Why is everybody staring at me? That's kind of like in your mind, right? And so I need a shift. So they talk about, as I go through here, this shift happens from within through a connection. How do I get that connection is going through this process. It doesn't say, do you understand it? It says, do you want what we have? Well, what is it that we have? Those of us that went before myself, those who put this together, recovered from the thing that's killing me. Does that kind of make sense? So what they have is a solution to a dilemma that I can't seem to shift, shake, or get rid of. I seem to be faced with that dilemma again of the picking up again because of the insanity. So here we go. So as we go through the 4-step, what's the purpose of the 4-step? Is if I need this connection with source, power, or God, whatever you want to call it, this connection that happens deep down within that we all have it, right? It's fundamentally in every man, woman, and child, this sixth sense, this life force, this thing that talks to you, this thing that has you sitting in a meeting, this thing that has you looking for a different experience than what you're having, this thing that you talk to, right? What are you doing? Why am I doing this? Anybody ever have that conversation with yourself? Right? And you're trying to figure out, well, what you're trying to do is talk to an illness that has no understanding or basis to it. And you're trying to use logic to talk to this thing that's not in the parking lot doing push-ups, it's with you. Right? It's a part of this condition. It's an illness, a malady that centers in the mind. Right? And through this course of action, we have this psychic change or spiritual experience. Well, how do you know that? Well, those that put this together and those that sponsored me said, as the result of these steps, they've had a new experience. So I was 11 years in and out, right? My last relapse, I did 360 meetings in 90 days. I got a 3-month chip. This is 11 years of in and out. right? And I just did 360 meetings in 90 days. I got a 3-month chip. An hour later, I was drinking. Just baffled. Gave the best talk as somebody didn't have a clue what they were talking about you ever heard. But I was the only one. Well, me and the other people that were agreeing with me all didn't know that I didn't know that we didn't know what the hell we were talking about. So these guys took me through this course of action, and what the 4th step was when we got to page 64. And I made a decision to go through with the rest of this course of action, was step 4 was the beginning of the connection that I needed to ensure this relationship that I'd have to depend on. So what I have today is a daily reprieve contingent on the relationship that I developed through this course of action. I didn't know what that looked like before this, but I know everybody that went before me said as the result of these steps, they formulated their own experience with this power that made sense to them, enabling them to stay sober. So what's the purpose of a 4th step? Hint, top of page 64. To remove the blocks. From what? From the source. Where's the source? Deep down within. Right? It's something that I've tapped into now and then. The thing that's kind of said, hey, gave me that hope or whatever. That voice deep down, that subtle thing deep down. It's different from my own voice, but it's down with the 6th sense or intuitiveness, whatever you want to call it, life force, something that kind of talks to me, right? So is to remove the blocks. So we're looking for the common manifestations of the things within ourselves which had defeated us. What we need to learn is a 4-step process or an inventory process, how to look at our lives differently, right? And that's what the first part they talk about here. Therefore, we started upon a personal inventory. Okay, what am I supposed to learn here is how to look at my life differently. What am I looking for? The things in myself that caused my failure. I'm looking for the things, we did exactly the same thing with our lives. Everybody see that down here? It's the 3rd paragraph down. We did exactly the same thing with our lives. We took stock honestly. First thing we're looking for, first we searched out the flaws in our makeup what caused our failure. So what are we looking for? The things in ourselves that caused our failure. Wouldn't that be a good thing to know? Right? It was like, it'd be a good thing to know the difference between poison ivy and toilet paper, right? It'd be a good thing to know. That's kind of like the flaws in our makeup that cause our failure, right? So, first, I don't know why I go there. A lot of damage. Something happens. See who's listening anyways. A couple of people are like, what did he say? Okay, so, which caused our failure. Being convinced that self manifested in various ways which had defeated us, we considered as common manifestations. So what's the first thing we're looking for in the common manifestations of the things that not only blocked us off, but caused our failure? What's the first thing? It says right there, resentments. Right? And so when we went through this process, which is kind of interesting, then it led us into the second thing that caused our failure, which is fears. Which is kind of interesting, but through that process, we're looking how we react or respond to life based on our instincts and how we involve other people, right? How we involve other people, how we involve our own pain. Oh, wasn't that an enlightening situation? Before we're seeing how other people were more to blame for our lives, right? All of a sudden, we're starting to see, holy shit, I invited 90% of this. I went looking for it. Right? It's like when my brain gets up a half an hour before I do. It's waiting for me. Hello, can we get started now? We have to call the meeting to order. And we need your participation because it takes a lot of work to feel like shit. Right? Right? How long did it take? And then when you really get working on your mind, you got to shut everything off and get horizontal, lie down with a tub of ice cream. Anybody? Takes a lot of work to be depressed. You can't be moving very far, right? Just go for a walk. No, I want to be depressed. It takes work. The phone rings. Anybody ever depressed? See the phone ring? I better not answer that. Anyhow, that we permit. We see how we permit these very things that cause our failure or causing our demise or causing our problems. We see now we're becoming more of an observer to what's happening in our mind. It's kind of interesting because most people think, I got no resentments. How many people thought that? Until you make a list, it's like, holy shit. There's a lot going on up there. All I can see is one resentment at a time. So now we're doing it's like, wow, interesting, right? It's like 3 weeks worth of dishes. Okay, so anybody ever walk into their kitchen, look at us, and just turn around and leave? I remember those times it was like it got so bad, like flies or when I was drinking, and you go look at the sink and it's plugged and you see that grease form, and you're trying to get something to open the drain, and then you have to actually stick your hand down there to get it. Anybody? That's like our inventory. Oh my God, I don't want to know. You can't ignore it. So you start, and it teaches you how to take everything out of the sink, put it to a side, put it in categories, put fresh water in there. It may sound kind of weird, but that's what it does. It takes you through a process of cleaning it. So when you look back, you kind of go, wow, you feel good about the idea of cleaning it. It's like when you, maybe I'm weird, but most people, when they clean their bathroom, like really clean, like back in the day, like clean, what's the first thing you want to do with a clean bathroom? Take a shower. Have a shower, right? And clean sheets, right? It's kind of like, there's something about the whole process, right? But nobody likes the idea of it on this side of it. But once you go through the process, it's kind of like that's what they're talking about here. And as you go through the fear, as they laid out, what happens is I'm starting to have my experience with accessing this power, right? I'm starting to see how when I apply it to these resentments, I'm starting to get a bit of relief. When I apply it to these anxieties, I'm not having so much anxiety all day. Now I'm not having 24 hours of anxiety. I may be having 20. Is that progress? It may sound kind of weird, but now I'm able to maybe kind of orchestrate what's happening in my mind a little more. I still indulge in it way too much when you're new, because what gets you motivated is usually pain threshold. 3 days of pain, and then you start praying. Anybody? I can't be alone in that, right? Okay, I'll apply this stupid prayer that doesn't seem to... Oh my God, I get relief. And then we go, how does it work? Let me think how it works. Because I can't create the relief that I get. It's a phenomenon. It's an unexplainable thing that I seem to tap in through willingness, that I start having an experience. So when they get to the fear, they talk about perhaps there's a better way. And what we learn is a recipe here. And if you kind of go page 68, right? So on 68, they talk about, here, we never apologize to anyone for depending upon our Creator. We can laugh at those who think spirituality to the way of weakness. Paradoxically, wow, how's that, is the way of strength. The verdict of the ages of faith means courage. All men of faith have courage. They trust their God. We never apologize for God. Instead, we let Him demonstrate through us what He can do. We ask Him to remove our fear and to direct our attention to what He would have us be. At once, we commence to outgrow fear. So what's just really cool is we learned the recipe for mastering resentment. We're learning how to outgrow fear through the application of spiritual ideas and principles. And what's really interesting is this idea back in We Agnostics, they talked about on page 51 here, they showed how the changes came over them when many hundreds of people are able to say that the consciousness of the presence of God today is the most important fact of their lives. They present a powerful reason why one should have faith, which is really kind of interesting. And as we kind of go through this, they talk about on page 55, and it talks about, yet we have been seeing another kind of flight, a spiritual liberation from this world. People who rose above their problems, they said God made these things possible, and we only smiled. So we've gone from smiling about these whack jobs saying that God made them raise above their problems and they're having a totally different experience. I remember when I went through this, I thought the guys who were 12-step were crazy the way they were talking. Like they were talking about this way of life. They were able to master resentments, outgrow fear, be of service, have peace, that they weren't getting in the same scrapes that they were. They intuitively know how to handle situations to use the bathroom. They had an intuitiveness that kept them out of dark lanes, which means out of trouble, right? They had something that this thing said, don't go this way. What I lost somewhere along the line, something says, oh, let's go this way. I lost that. Watch this. Hold my beer. Kind of same thing, right? Watch this. I got it from here. So just totally oblivious to the onset of what I was creating. I don't know if anybody had that. So here, when these guys talked about they had an intuitive or way of life that rised above their problems, that they were able to match calamity with serenity, I didn't know what they were talking about because they sounded crazy. Because I'm going with my experience. I've tried everything to fix me with me, and I'm not getting what they're talking about. And they're relying and trusting on certain prayers and understanding principles. These people are nuts, right? I was on the wrong side of crazy. They were on the right side of crazy. They're right. Their cheese and crackers were in the same area code. Mine couldn't be found. Mine needed a passport to kind of locate my cheese and cracker. But you ask me, I'm doing pretty good. Just a bit of bad luck, right? Unemployable. Anyways, So from page 55, just willing to do this stupid process by participating in the saving of my own life. I argued all the way through it, right? Like I kind of went, this is stupid. Good. You want to die or you want to do this? Okay, I'll do it. That's how they used to talk to me. They were very insensitive back then. Not like me, very sensitive, caring, loving. Easy, everybody, easy. But what they did was they kept me focused on the task at hand because my mind would try to talk me out of the very thing that I needed to participate in the saving of my own life. Right? Anybody? I need to do this weekend. Well, maybe overreacting. I got this thing. I'm fine. Life's good. Where's the 12 and 12 study? Let's go talk about Bill's experience. I don't need my own. But here they're talking about, I'm starting to have this experience and I'm starting to go, wow, there's something to this. I don't understand it. But there's something to this that I'm starting to experience, right? So I'm starting to catch what they're saying is I'm starting to have a little relief from the bondage itself. I'm starting to have a little relief from the difficulties within my own emotional and mental disorders. I'm starting to have a bit of maybe this world ain't too bad of a place to be. And I'm coming to meetings and some of you people might be okay. I'm not hating everybody, but some of you might be okay. That's a shift. It's hard to believe, but I had problems when I got here. I know it doesn't look like it. Okay. Easy, George. Okay, so then here's the recipe, right? So they talk about here. We let him demonstrate through us what we ask him to remove our fear. In order to ask for something to be removed, what has taken place that hasn't really been, we were able to demonstrate beforehand. So something's taken place that I have a new awareness that I didn't have before. Right? Because fear was always the victim of after the fact. Like, how many people got great hindsight here? Looking back, I'm a genius. Looking forward, not so much. Right? So here, you're able to see something you couldn't see before. You're able to see a shift in your thinking and in your emotions that are fear-based that's causing anxiety or thinking. A lot of people say, I have an anxiety disorder. No, you have a thinking disorder. Because if your thinking was correct, would you have the anxiety connected with your thinking? Right? And your body don't know the difference between fight or flight. If you're thinking something, you ever notice your body starts to react like there's something the matter, you trigger the instinct kind of response, and you start being nauseated. It could cause this. Like if you really live in fear too long, it causes actually some real emotional and physical problems, right? Heartburn, indigestion, lack of sleep, appetite. Like there's a whole array of things that happen. Now you become aware of the idea there's a shift in my emotions here. What's going on? My instincts, my social, my ambition, my thinking has created a kind of situation with my instincts. So now I'm aware there's a shift, so I step back from it as an observer, and then what does it ask me to do? Ask me to remove it, right? Remove that fear. So if it's removed, I'm starting to get some relief, right? I'm coming back to where? The moment. I'm coming back to there was no problem here in the moment, right? So they talk about here to remove our fear and direct our attention to what he would have us be at once we commence to outgrow fear.
Which page are you on there?
Page 68. So we've already gone through this process in great detail. You see where I'm going with this. So, and then it gets into relationships or sex inventory, harms, all this stuff that we're having a problem with that we never really wanted to bring to light. A lot of us have guilt, shame, remorse, or conduct and things we didn't, doing things that we don't want to do and doing things that we shouldn't be doing. Anybody? Right? We all have that and stuff that we care. So this is making peace with my past, right? All that stuff, right? Making peace with it, right? And which is cool. And then looking at the things that caused my failure, and then having a look at to recreate so I could have the relationships that I want, hope, and always dream for, right? A union with another human being at a level that is not codependent. I don't know how else to say it, right? That is based on two people sharing an experience, two ships moving in the same direction, not a hostile takeover of one. There's a big difference, right? We're like, yay, let's move in. We're taking over this vessel. We're getting married. Nonsense. It's still two people moving in the same direction, and the beauty of it is, even if you're in a relationship, what some people are, you can redefine what that relationship looks like. You could both sit at the table and say, hey, this is where we're at, right? This is some of the problems we're having. This is where we want to go. And you both shape a sane and sound idea for the future and move toward that. Really cool. And then they talked about here is on page 69, they talked about the ability to start meditating and prayer. And so what we talked about, what we see is step 4 is the basis for step 11. We'll continue everything in step 11. But we're getting a good idea what the blocks are, what the deficiencies are, what the defects are, and where we go from here. We have all that. We have the resentment list, we have the fear list, and we have the conduct list, and we have the harm list, and we're moving on. But most important, what is the whole essence of what this is all about is they started with the idea of we're going to show you a recipe. Remember on page 63, they talked about their experience. When we sincerely took such a position, all sorts of things followed, not happened, followed. And they talked about their experience through a course of action, which is the top of page 63. And then it says, now we are now at step 3. We're going to show you how to have the same experience that we just talked about. Therefore, we started upon a personal inventory, and now what's the purpose of this thing is to get connected to a power, to have our own experience. Yes? Do we all agree on that? So what happens is there's two things that happen in the 4th step. Either people go on to think it's about them still, right? And they're working on this trigger, they're working on past defects, they're working on themselves. That's treatment center-based ideas, right? And that's what you're paying them for. You're paying them where you could be your own solution to you, right? How many people would feel good about giving a treatment center $30,000 and at the end there's nothing we can do for you? Here's a big book, good luck. Right? Because you don't seem the type to kind of click into this, right? You seem the type that need a psychic change or spiritual experience, right? Which are different types. So here we're at that place of this, and this is what they're hoping. And this should be our experience if we've carefully followed directions. It talks about on page 71. We hope you are convinced now that God can remove whatever self-will has blocked you off from him. What is the self-will that's been blocking us off? Resentments. Fears. Conduct. Harms. Does that kind of make sense? If I was free of that stuff, how would I feel? Free. Oh, weird. Kind of weird. Shit went away. I'm feeling good. Right? Okay. If you have already made a decision and an inventory of your grosser handicaps, what's your grosser handicaps? Yeah, that's it. But people want to go back to, no, I want to go to self. I want to be thinking about, selfish and considerate. That's just vehicles. That's connections based on our instincts. That's not the problem. Because we're born selfish and considerate and self-seeking. How many people find that surprising? How many people got kids, nephews, or seen those little bastards run around unsupervised? Right? They're brutal. Yeah. Hey, don't do that. Don't hit your sister with a stick. Right? Put down the rock. No. Anyways, you got to teach them how to get along with other people. Share. I don't want to share. You ever see kids? I don't want to share. But you got the whole bag of smart. Too bad. I want to sit here, eat them, and make them suffer. You ever see kids with the only one in ice cream? Little bastards, eh? Okay, so it's in their nature. They have to learn how not to do that. So anyhow. You made a good beginning. That being so, you've swallowed and digested some big chunks of truth about yourself. Yeah, I've seen how driven I am now. I see how much I really hate everybody equally. I used to think all these people, one of the funniest things is I used to think all these people that I had a problem with all had contempt by the look on their face. You ever see somebody's face, you just know they got contempt by the way they look at you. They're like they're eating lemons or something. Anybody see that look? Or that relative that, they're judging you? Anybody? Family men, they judge you, the sons of a bitches, right? That's what I used to think. Then I found out I'm the biggest critic there is. I used to judge every single one of them. I'm the biggest. Anybody? It's kind of interesting. I had more contempt for them than they ever had for me. And then I found out how many times I've talked myself out of relationships, how many events, because I would be thinking what they're thinking. Interesting, eh? That's what they mean. Swallowed and digested some big chunks of truth about it. So, that was the hope of the process, right? Is that we have the recipe to learn how to master resentment, outgrow fear, and to bring our conduct into an alignment that we agreed upon that we would hope to achieve, and to make a list of the harms. Pretty cool, right? We have all that. I have the recipe and the way to create this change. So, what is this all about? They keep on reminding us what this is all about. Why? Because we start thinking. Any thinkers here? We start thinking, and then we forget we think it's still about self, right? It's not about self. It's about getting connection to this source. Why? So I can have a psychic change or spiritual experience. Because if I don't have that, what's my fate? I'm going to relapse again. I'm going to die. I need to get this daily reprieve, this connection with source that allows me to be free of the things that's killing me. So I need this daily reprieve. How do I get this daily reprieve? Through this course of action, I need to learn this recipe. Step 11 says, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. Where did we get the basis of that understanding? Ready? Page 71. Remember, we start thinking again. Page 71. We hope you are convinced now that God can remove whatever self-will has blocked you off from Him. Where did we learn those recipes? Earlier, they talked about here in meditation, page 69, right? This conversation with this power. We ask God to mold our ideas. We ask God, right? In meditation, we ask God what we should do about each specific matter, right? We treat this problem as we would any other. Is the acknowledgement, pray for direction or pray for relief, and pray for the power to do the next right thing. I'm not doing it. I'm seeking counsel. Because how many times I thought I was doing the next right thing and it wasn't the next right thing. Like a lot of those things I was thinking I was being such a nice guy about, I owe a lot of amends based on my 4 step. It's like, maybe I'm not such a nice guy after all. Don't worry, I was just as surprised as some of you to find that out, right? So what do I do with all this now? Well, they're going to remind me. right? They've told me what the purpose of the 4-step. I should have this experience somewhat. If I don't, then I'm missing something. Self is taken over somewhere. There should be prayer all the way through the 4-step in the application of these things to create a shift. And where the shift happens is not so much in the mind, but in here, the emotional attachment to it, right? Because that's our problem, right? Once the emotion happens, that energy's got to go somewhere. How many people like being resentment alone? When you're in resentment, you got to involve somebody. How many people like being pissed off alone? You got to find somebody. There's got to be a volunteer somewhere. Oh, phone rang. It's, driving the car. It's like I remember being in the bar when you're pissed off and no one wants to fight with. A guy from the other end of the bar would go, "Hey, asshole." You go, "What?" Nobody like that here? Anybody conflict-oriented? Waiting for someone to show up. You're sitting there all day thinking about conflict, and then your partner gets home, and you pick up. They're like, "What? You know what?" You're there all day waiting to have a fight with them or waiting for them to show up to continue the fight. Anybody?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Because I know what you've been up to. Okay, so here we go. So what the hell do we do with all this stuff? Having made our personal inventory, page 72. Having made our what shall we do about it? Here we go. We've been trying to get a new attitude, a new relationship with our Creator, and to discover the obstacles in our path. Have we discovered the obstacles in our path?
Yes.
What are those? Fears, conducts, and harms. It's simple, right? We got to follow the bouncing ball. It's kind of like, okay, they're not going to switch it. It's not the cup game anymore. Like, this is the ball we're following. Remember that what was that, romper room? Where you'd be singing the ball go bing, bing, bing. Anyways, I'm back. I digress. Woohoo! Okay, so we have admitted certain defects. Oh, now they're using the word defects. What defects? What defects specifically?
Character.
Okay, ready? We're going to back it up again. Okay, ready? Because they're not going to... Because see how the mind takes over? Right? I'm going to go with what I heard somewhere, what somebody taught me. Right? I'm going to go with that. Right? So let's go back. We're going to back to the book. Okay. Having made our personal inventory, what shall we do about it? We've been trying to get what? A new attitude, a new relationship with who? Our Creator, and to discover the obstacles in our path. We've admitted certain defects. What are the obstacles in our path?
Anger, pride.
So based on what we've done so far in the inventory, not the 12 and 12, it's not a 12 and 12 study. In the big book, what are the obstacles in our path? Resentments. Okay, ready?
Yeah.
Okay, we got that? Okay, ready? Now, we have admitted certain defects. What are the defects?
Conduct harm.
Right? We've admitted it. Like these things are formulating my personality, are they not? Are these resentments formulating my personality? How about the fears? How about the conduct? All these things are determining my reaction to life. This thing that's happening behind the scene at a subconscious level. I'm responding to more past stuff than I am present stuff, yes? So as long as these things are present, I'm going to continue to be the wonderful, charming, loving person that I've always been. Yeah, exactly. Right? We have ascertained in a rough way what the trouble is. We've put our finger on the weak items in our personal inventory. What are the weak items in our personal inventory?
Resentment, harm.
And what our attachment to them, the value we place on them, the amount of hours we use to keep them cultivated. Takes a lot of work to keep this shit going. Years. Yes, huh? We have our doctorate in it. Never mind our apprenticeship. We have a PhD in how to maintain and develop resentments, right? And like, anybody have conversations with people not even around anymore? Anyways, so now these are about to be cast out. What's about to be cast out? Yeah, because as long as these things are present, they keep me blocked off, and I need to be free of these things. Third step prayer is relieve me of the bondage of self. Take away my difficulties, may have victory over them, may bear witness to those out help of thy power, thy way of life. So I get access to this power. I now become a witness that what they're telling me is true because I'm experiencing this thing. I'm free of resentment. At this moment, right now, I'm 100% resentment free. None whatsoever, but I haven't gotten in my truck yet. No, but that's not a resentment. That's an instinct-based response. There's nothing. Resentment is the carrying forward. I have no resentment from yesterday that I'm carrying forward today. Yeah, but still, that's an instinct-based response to today's stuff, right? That may be anger that I'm able to curb or to take care of. Resentment is the continuation. I have no fear that's eating my lunch today. At this moment, none. I'm totally free of that. And if anything comes up, it doesn't take root because I acknowledge it, I pray, and I seek counsel. My conduct is in alignment with what I prayed for. And harms are 98% taken care of. There's still a couple that one person just, we'll get into that later, but one person just got to finally let me get a hold of them after 34 years. So they felt safe enough that through a second contact. Anyways, long story. I tried meeting them when I was 16, and the person says, "You're not going to kill him, are you?" I'm 16 years sober. "Not going to kill him, are you?" Okay. Moving on, not ready. Okay, so here we go through, now we read into action, and it has everything you need to find the person you're looking for to do your fifth step. It's critical that we find a closed-mouthed person. It's also critical, they said, that we're telling them what we're about to do. Meaning, when I find the right candidate, I need to tell them I'm on a life and death errand. I need somebody who's going to listen to my fourth step and not tell me about my fourth step. Somewhere along the line, people got the idea it's my job, or as a person listening to fifth step, to point out, that the child within or family of origin, that I become a psychologist as a result of listening to your fifth. What a person is, a closed-mouthed friend or person. Now you got so many people in AA, but the real purpose of the fifth step is interesting. This is the recipe to long-term sobriety, and they talk about. This is the first thing you need to obtain to get sobriety, and it's the first thing you lose before your dry date changes, sobriety date changes. Anybody like to know what that is? Anybody like to know what that recipe is? It's on page 73. Well, we'll start over here. So they talk about here about the fifth step on page 72. It talks about this is the fifth step. Okay, here we go. So this requires, we have put our finger on the weak items on our personal. Now these are about to be cast out. This requires action on our part, which, when completed, will mean that we have admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our defects. Right? Resentment, selfish, inconsiderate, dishonesty, and all the vehicle that carries these things, right? Based on my instincts, right? So, this brings us to the fifth step in the program of recovery mentioned in the preceding chapters. So, which is interesting, you've already admitted to God. You've already admitted to yourself. There's one element left. Another human being. This is where the problem starts. How many people didn't even do a fourth step and they were worried about their fifth step? Right? And then we might as well go right into ninth step. Haven't even done a third yet. I'm worried about my nines. Have you done 4 yet? No. Anyways, moving on. This is perhaps difficult, especially discussing our defects with another person. We will think we have done well enough in admitting these things to ourselves. There is doubt about that. In actual practice, we absolutely find a solitary self-appraisal insufficient. Many of us thought it necessary to go much further. We will be more... What's that? Anybody following along? No one's following along? Huh?
Reconcile.
Good. Just seeing who's still involved here. To discuss ourselves with another person when we see good reasons why we should do so. The best reason first. This is the best reason why we need to do a fifth based on the 4 we did. If we skip this vital step, we may not overcome drinking. Time after time, newcomers have tried to keep to themselves certain facts about their lives, trying to avoid this humbling experience. They have turned to easier methods. Almost invariably, they got drunk. Having preserved with the rest of the program, they wondered why they fell. We think the first reason is they never completed their house cleaning. Right? They took inventory all right, but hung on to some of the worst items in stock. Here we go. Ready? They only thought they had lost their egotism and fear. They only thought they had humbled themselves, but they had not learned. What are we learning through this process? Learning, right? Enough of humility, fearlessness, and honesty in the sense we find it necessary until they told someone else all their life story. So now, based on the columns, based on all that stuff, I fill it in with when I do my 5th step. So after I've gone through this, what's the best resource that we have in order to find somebody to help us with our 5th step? What's the best resource that we have? Anybody want a second guess or just leave it at that? Huh?
Priest.
How about prayer? That would have been your 3rd guess, but good. I'm glad you got it. Right? It's like, well, shotgun it, we'll get it. But see how fast the brain works? So if I'm trusting, relying on God, right, this process, which is the page 68, it talks about. So what's God's will? To play the role he assigns. What's the assignment? Is to be present, be of service, be of help, be at peace. Be detached from yesterday so I can live in today and not crippled by the potential of tomorrow. How could I be free today? Well, prayer, right? So in any other problem, we learn how to pray. In meditation, we ask. Remember we read that on page... I'll go back up so you can see I'm not lying. It's page 69. It talks about... We treat sex as we would any other problem. In meditation, we ask. So if we're having a problem, who am I going to get to do my 5th step with me? God, can you show me someone? Could you lead me to somebody? So when I did this, I kind of said, man, who am I going to do my 5th step with? After reading about all the instructions on it, I said, who am I going to do my 5th step? The first thing that came to mind was Steve. I thought, I'm not doing it with Steve. Steve looked like a whack job. Right? And then as I prayed, it says, do it with Steve. Steve was one of the guys helping me go through this process in the group. So I did it with Steve. I did my 5th step with Steve. I went 100 miles an hour through my 5th step. It wasn't about analyzing and all that. It was about just letting another human being. I was sweating going through my 5th step. And he's doing his dishes, he's cooking hamburgers, taking it easy. And says, anything else? Like no big deal. And I'm like, this is major. I'm sweating. But what I'm exhibiting is humility, right? And honesty. I'm doing something that I swear I'd never do. Like it's created that much where I'm sweating, talking about shit I said I'd never talk to anybody. And a couple items I only shared with my brother because of statute of limitations. So certain items where they talk about we can't save ourselves at the expense of somebody else, right? So I shared with my brother that I know he'll go to the grave with him. But Steve, I did everything else. So here's what we do on page 75. When we decide who's to hear our story, we waste no time. We have written an inventory. We're prepared for a long talk. We explain to our partner what we are about to do and why we have to do it. He or she should realize we are engaged upon a life and death errand. That's pretty heavy when you think about that, right? We're on a life and death errand. Most people approaching this way will be glad to help. They will be honored by our confidence. We pocket our pride and go to it, illuminating every twist of character, every dark cranny of the past. Once we have taken this step, withholding nothing, we are delighted. We can look at the world. We can look at the world in the eye. We can be alone at perfect peace and ease. Our fears fall from us. We begin to feel the nearness of our Creator. Important here. We may have had certain spiritual beliefs, but now we begin to have a spiritual experience. Where does the spiritual experience begin?
Step 3. Prayer.
Okay, ready? Our fears fall from us. Everybody there? We begin to feel the nearness of our Creator. What was the point of the whole process? To have the blocks removed, yes?
Yes.
Now we begin to have that connection because we've gone through the humility process of the 5th step. There's something in it. There's something in that I don't know what it is, but it's something. But now we begin to have but now we begin to have a spiritual experience. When does the spiritual experience start? Now, 5th step. Right, because we're learning the mechanics of getting connected. This seals the deal is the 5th step, right? This intuitiveness. So they talk about here. This is interesting. Feel the feeling that the drink problem has disappeared will often come strong. We feel we're on the broad highway, walking hand in hand with the spirit of the universe. So they talk about that on page 164, right? So. Trudge the road of happy destiny. We should be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit. We move from the fellowship of here into the fellowship, a different fellowship. We're now connected in a different way, right? Which is pretty cool, the internal part, right? So, walk hand in hand with the Spirit of the universe. Returning home, we find a place where we can be quiet for an hour. Carefully reviewing what we have done, we thank God from the bottom of our hearts that we know Him better. Taking this book down from the shelf, we turn to the pages which contains the 12 steps, carefully reading the first 5 proposals. We have asked if we have omitted anything, for we are building an arch through which we shall walk a free man. Right? Free man at last. Is our work solid so far? Are the stones properly in place? Have we skimped on the cement put into our foundation? Have we tried to make mortar without sand? If we can answer satisfaction, we'd now look at step 6. So, which is interesting, if you look at page 62, right? There was an idea here that we could get the access code to this experience. They talk about here, this is the how and why of it. First, we had to quit playing God. It didn't work. Next, we decided hereafter in this drama of life, God was going to be our director. He's the principal, we're his agent. He's the father, we're his children. Most good ideas are simple. And this concept was the keystone of the new and triumphant arch which we passed to freedom. So they're telling us we're the access code to pass to freedom. Here, they said we've built it. What did we build? We've built this access to the spiritual realm within inside of us. It's like there's 2 different rooms here, right? Before this room, this door wasn't in this room. Now it showed us how to put a door in there that we could go into the other room. So when this room becomes too much, we can step into the other room where it's calm, quiet, and calm within ourselves. We find that quiet place within ourselves that we could get grounding. That harbor safe, that why we used to drink and do all those drugs was to find some form of refuge within inside of ourselves, yes? And it stopped working. If it still worked, we'd still be doing it, yes? It created this illusion of the matrix, right? It created this illusion of well-being. But what happens is, as soon as it started to dissipate, our lives became more and more havoc, more full of resentment, the worse it got. Here, they're saying, now I got access to this room within inside of me anytime, anywhere. I don't have to go looking anywhere outside of me for this peace, happiness, and contentment. I have it right here, right now. And what I get access to is what everything I looked for in all those people, places, things, drugs, and all the stuff that I used to do to find this contentment, peace, and happiness, I now have access to. And everything I've ever done pales compared to what I get access to. If I could have got access to this and what I was doing, I would still be doing that. this got to be greater than any experience that I've ever had. And I'm telling you, I've done the odd thing. You know, right? I've had people go, wow, okay, anyways, but that's another story. So what I found through this process is an experience that I got to experience. And I went, wow. So the summary of this whole thing before I went through it was, what is this? All the questions. And after gone through this to this point, there's no more any questions. I now understand what it is that I was always looking for. So we have the 7th edition. We're self-supporting through our own contribution. Read 6 and 7. It's really complicated. Next week, we're going to get right into it. You might be mind-blown how easy 6 and 7 are. Live long and prosperous. May the force be with you. And we close with the 3rd step prayer for those that wish. What's the foundation for a great life? God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those thou would help, for thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. Might do thy will always. So we have the worksheets, everything over there. Appreciate you guys online. Thank you, everybody.